2014 World Cup campaign in Manaus as they face the Italians. England versus Italy, this Saturday night from 11 on talkSPORT.
Harry's headlines on talkSPORT with 666bet.com. Get involved.
11 o'clock on talkSPORT on Saturday in the evening. Full build-up before that. We'll have Uruguay, Costa Rica at 8 o'clock. 4 live games for you that day. It's England, Italy, live on your World Cup station. Every goal, every day, every game. And right now we're looking ahead to the action in Brazil with 666bet.com and their ambassador, the one and only Harry Redknapp, who's been with us all week. Morning, Harry.
Colin, good morning. How you doing?
Nice. Nice to talk to you, buddy. And we should probably start with Danny Welbeck and keeping an eye on him, I suppose, at the moment, assessing his thigh injury. Where does he fit into the England setup for you? What's his importance? What does he offer the squad, mate?
Well, I think he's done very well, you know, when he's played. And, in fact, you know, he's probably scored... He's been more successful in the England team than he has, you know, with Man United in terms of scoring. So, obviously, I think he's right in Roy's plans. I mean, he could well start him. There's every chance that he could start Danny Welbeck. So he's certainly going to want him fit and available, Colin, you know.
And it's true, mate. You're right. 8 goals in 20 games under Roy Hodgson. I mean, that's prolific by any international standard. And is it true to say where we might sit and look at any squad and say, well, he's the best player or he offers this? Is it true that a manager just likes some players, he connects with them? It's not necessarily about who's the best, it's who he can get the best out of?
Well, yeah, where he sees their importance to the team, he may be a player that you'd look at individually and you think, well, but he'll do what the manager wants in a certain position for him, and he'll do that role. And I think he probably sees, you know, Danny Welbeck giving him bags of energy. He's scored goals. You know, I read in the paper today, he's talking about him getting around Pirlo or something if he's fit. You know, whether that's something in his mind, I wouldn't know. You know, he certainly got the energy to get back and do that type of job, but someone is going to have to do that, I would think, anyway, against Italy. So whether he would go with Danny Welbeck to do that, I wouldn't be sure, but I suppose that it may be a possibility.
Harry, we only ever have a couple of things to talk about a day. It hasn't even been a ball kicked at the World Cup. It's almost like we're just in a state of flux waiting for it to start tomorrow. But the dreaded penalties, they're there. England have been practicing them without a goalkeeper. Does that make any sense to you?
Well, we had a sports scientist. I've never used one. I'm sure Stuart may have done. I don't know, but it was new to me, and I was a bit old-fashioned, perhaps. And he came in, this guy called Steve Black, and he worked with the team the last couple of months of the season, and he was fantastic. I've got to be honest, he was absolutely brilliant. But he came to me after watching a couple of days training, and he said, "Why don't they do the shooting practices with no goalkeeper?" And I thought, are you sure? Like, what is he talking about, you know? So that was his idea, give him confidence, hit the back of the net, and I could see what maybe the penalties, I think they were hitting the balls into hoops or whatever, so at least they're going to choose their target and hit where they're looking to hit, and, you know, not worry about the keeper. That's where I'm going to put the ball, make their mind up and strike it there. And if they can hit where they've been hitting them through the hoops, goalkeeper or not, they're not going to save them. So he's probably saying that it may well have come from the sports scientist who's with them to Roy.
I've actually read a thing about the sort of science of taking penalties in pressure situations, and there's loads of really... They say it's a lottery, and it's not really... There are things you can do. You know, how long a player's been on the pitch, for example, is a direct correlation to who scores and who doesn't. Also the age. If you're of a certain younger age and you walk up, you're more likely to not feel immortal going to take the penalty, whereas if you're a little older, that's why it makes Stuart's redemption so beautiful, do you know what I mean? Because you have to defy the skeletons, you have to defy those memories that are burnt on your retina from missing, and you do it with the younger players. But the other thing in that survey I read, Harry said, you should never look at the goalkeeper when you're taking a penalty. You should. So maybe it does make sense, Harry. Maybe it's not the worst thing in the world. Stuart, do you relate to it?
No. He knows, there's a man there, as I say, Stuart, ask him, and no one would know better than Stuart would they? He's been there and done it all, so he can answer the question better than I could or anybody else.
What do you reckon, Mr. Pearce?
I don't subscribe to penalties being a lottery, that is for sure. I never have done. I mean, it's a lottery if you turn up at penalties and you don't know who your best 5 penalty takers are because you've not studied them. That's the only lottery I think there is.
Have you always known in an England shirt in major tournaments, Stuart, who was going to take them?
In teams I've managed, yes.
Yeah. What about teams you're playing in?
No. No, never.
And do you think that's a disadvantage then when you've been playing with England in penalty shootouts that have been lost, that they weren't chosen in advance?
Well, look at some of the people that have missed penalties that have put England out. David Batty, Paul Ince, Gareth Southgate. They're all non-penalty takers. Probably what would they have taken between them? 10 penalties in their whole career?
Yeah.
That's a lottery.
Yeah, it is indeed. First game tomorrow.
I think you can, Colin. You can sit there. I mean, I will sit there and watch the TV, and not always, obviously. There's certain people you think, and some people come up, you think, no, don't fancy him. And quite often, you're as right as, quite often, because it's just not what they're not used to taking penalties, and it's a big pressure on them. But, I mean, when you talk about great penalties, what he did with playing Italy, I know in the first game, what Pirlo did in the European Championships was the most incredible thing, wasn't it? If he misses that, Italy are out, really, and he's walked up and the nerve that he showed, I mean, that is real confidence and real bottle to go and do that. If he'd have missed that, he'd have been slaughtered, I'm sure.
Do you remember Maradona in the tournament? I want to say it was 90, but it might not have been a bit later. Do you remember he took a penalty where he chipped it and it just straight into the keeper's hands? And everyone was like, it was the worst penalty ever. And in the same tournament, the next penalty he did the same thing and scored. Just the audacity of the creature to do that. It puts him in that one-of-a-kind bracket. Harry, the first game then, Brazil-Croatia tomorrow night. How are you approaching this World Cup? Will you be looking to pick up a couple of players? Will you be on duty when you're watching, or you will be sitting back with a nice glass of sangria, maybe a little £5 bet? How are you approaching the opening game, Brazil-Croatia?
Definitely have a punt, that's for sure. But, definitely be sitting there looking at the game, and I think it's going to be a good game. Croatia are a good side. Yeah. Brazil are in for a tough first game. Yeah. Croatia are full of confidence. They've got a great togetherness about them. And they've got some good players. Luka Modric in the peak of his form. The lad at Seville, the other midfield player. They've got some good players. And I think that they'll give Brazil a real game.
I remember, Harry, it's just popping into my head watching a World Cup game with you, and I think you had £2.50 on the amount of yellow cards in a game, and it was a Spurs.
£2.50,
yeah, and it was a Spurs player lost you the bet, wasn't it? Who was that? I remember you screaming. It was in like 92 minutes, and a Spurs player got booked, and you lost the bet. And I remember you screaming at the TV.
Yeah. So booking, don't. I'm sure. I don't know if it was as much as £2.50 though, Colin. My wife might be listening. I could be in trouble if she found out I was having £2.50 bets.
Harry,
maybe that's the code word. That was probably the code word. £2.50.
£2.50. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Right, Harry, thanks so much for joining this week. Much appreciated.
Good to talk to you, lads. See you,
buddy.
bye.
Cheers,
Take care. I think the phrase at the time was, taking the expletive sides, he'll never play for me again. It's very funny.
Just one thing on the penalties. I heard, according to the Times today, they missed plenty of the penalties, which I find bizarre.
What?
That's what the Times said today.
They missed the open goals.
They missed the open goals. Well, maybe they weren't open. If you had to get them into triangles, maybe you're aiming too hard for the triangle. Yeah. I don't know.
Do you remember in cricket when they brought in that thing to settle the draw? Where
Absolutely.
10 deliveries at a wicket, but it was an open wicket. And I think it was like 1-0 or 2-1.
How few you got?
It's ridiculous, right? Harry Redknapp and talkSPORT, thanks to 666bet.com. They're offering new customers odds of 66-1 in England winning this year's tournament. Maximum stake a tenner. Obviously, because otherwise they'd be bankrupt, wouldn't they? Want to get 66-1. Limited availability, conditions apply. It's been nice to have Harry Redknapp on. Next, as always, 11:15. That's our On This Day feature. We look back in World Cup history. Scotland fans, you're getting Archie Gemmell.
Harry's headlines on talkSPORT with 666bet.com. Get involved.
Colin Murray on talkSPORT.